Is it recording? Mm-hmm. Okay. The central question in our project that we did was how prevalent is racism in our community?
So in our project, we decided to research a controversial issue, which was racism, and we conducted our survey using a voluntary response sample at Potomac Mills Mall. We asked our participants, if you witness a stranger lingering around the store, would you let race play a role in whether or not you'll suspect them of stealing? And we also asked 2 other questions which involved their race and their age. And that's going to be on the next slide.
So these are the 3 questions we asked our participants. So the first one was a central question, the second one was the one about ethnicity, and the third one was about age. So instead of having them write everything out, we just sort of had the participants circle in rather than
having to fill out, so it'll be quicker.
And it would narrow our results down. This is mine, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so after doing some research, we didn't necessarily find a survey that had been conducted previously, but we did find a social experiment that a woman by the name of Bonnie Van Gilder carried out, I think in 2013. So the whole experiment was about, it revolved around racial stereotyping as well. So there were 3 actors in the experiment. There was a white male actor, a black male actor, and a white female actor. And basically what they did was they each went into parks at separate times and pretended to steal a bike that was chained to a post, and they wanted to the producers of the show wanted to see how people would react and whether racism would be noted. And then when the results of the study were produced, they were shocking. Oh god. So the results from the video showed that the black male actor received the most suspicion from onlookers. The white male actor received, like, he wasn't questioned at all, and the white female actress was, people went especially the male witnesses, they went as far as helping the female take off the chains and basically help her steal it. And one witness even knew that she was planning on stealing it. So yeah, I shouldn't talk about that because sorry. Okay, yeah, I shouldn't talk about that because that has nothing to do with it.
Yeah. So although the sample was voluntary response, we wanted to make sure that there was a high level of diversity amongst our sample. As we said before, we conducted our study at Potomac Mills Mall, and in order, I mentioned this Walmart Target. We initially had planned to do our study in Walmart and Target, but our proposals were declined because it's considered soliciting.
So we couldn't. We didn't want
to violate.
Yeah, exactly.
Violate their policies. So we decided to use people that were in the waiting areas or the sitting areas in the mall, and who didn't appear to be busy or in a rush.
We wanted to make sure that we weren't disturbing any people.
Yeah, so we did that instead. We presented the survey to the participants on the slips of paper, and we would read the questions out loud when necessary. So if they had poor eyesight, which did happen, and for those who didn't understand English, so for example, like Hispanic people. The flaws that were present in the conduction of the study was like the wording of questions, the variation in ethnicities, non-response, and we also suspected that not everyone was telling the truth for various circumstances. So, yeah. We did stay pretty consistent with the wording of the questions, but it's just there were instances where some people were unable to read.
Exactly mentioned before.
Yeah, or understand the survey. Hispanics and Asians made up a large proportion of our sample population, and people who chose not to participate claimed that they had no time, or they were in a rush, or they just didn't want to participate in the study at all. Um, the non-response group was mostly made up of people who were 40 years old and older. And as we said before, it's hard to like. It was hard to say that everyone who participated in the sample were telling the truth. Because we believe that people who discriminate against other races aren't able to easily admit it because they feel like they might get criticized or judged and stuff like that. So.
Okay, so these were the observed counts that were produced by the study. So basically, as we went along surveying people, we tried to record this information as we went, but when we did get home, we made sure to recount all our slips of paper and recount all our ethnicities and ages to make sure that our numbers were correct.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the state of our project, the state part of our project was we wanted to test the null hypothesis, which was the majority of our subjects will say race does play a role in whether they suspect someone of stealing, versus our alternative hypothesis, which was the majority of our suspects will say race does not play a role in whether they suspect somebody of stealing. And we use a significance level of 0.05. For our plan, we used a chi-square test of association / independence test. And so the only condition that was met from all three of them was independent. But because, okay, random wasn't met because we used voluntary response. And then large sample size wasn't met because all of our expected counts were not above 5, and that's going to be shown in the next slide, I believe. Yeah. Okay, they are. They're right here. So these were all our expected counts. So we calculated all of them at home. As you can see, like all of them are definitely not above 5. Some of them are like way below 5. So that condition was obviously not met.
Here it just shows our work for the due portion of the state plan due conclude. We calculated our test stats for ethnicity and age, and our degrees of freedom was 5. And we found the p-value using the table C from the textbook. And
the conclude part? Yeah, that part. Just skip it.
Okay, so we concluded that because our p-value was less than our significance level of 0.05, we have sufficient evidence to reject our null hypothesis and conclude that the majority of our subjects will say race does not play a role in whether or not they suspect someone of stealing. And here they're just bar graphs that show our results. The blue is signifies the people who answered yes based on their ethnicity, and the next one is the same thing but using age.
So in conclusion, as the first, we can go back. So the first graph shows that the only group of ethnicities that actually answered yes to our question were Asians and African Americans, and even that percentage, that was pretty low. And for age, we didn't necessarily recognize a pattern because, as you can see, there was pretty much some amount of people said yes, but 31 to 40 and 60 and above didn't say yes. But it was just sort of mixed. So there were some
improvements
that
have been made.
Yeah, there were many improvements that could have been made. First one was using a larger sample. This would have ensured that rather than just having Hispanics and Asians as our highest, or taking up a higher portion of our sample, we could have had a more representative sample of our community. And using a larger sample would also help us recognize patterns. So for the like we showed you the age percentage graphs, that we couldn't necessarily recognize a pattern for that one. So we thought that using a higher amount of people would help us, maybe see
get better results and have a clear
image of what
is the actual impact of racism
Right.
community.
And then the second one was using a different environment, like a quiet classroom, and setting up folders basically to allow the participant to carefully think through their decision
And honestly,
right.
without any pressure of being criticized.
And while we were conducting the experiment, we actually did encourage the participants to be honest. We even told them that it was anonymous, but
we still think since we were in a public place, they weren't
as likely to. And then we didn't have anywhere to go either. Like, although we tried to turn around and give them their privacy, we just believe some people didn't
feel comfortable.
Right, exactly, yeah. Yeah. And then that's it. Okay.